Joining me today on the Capital TV show, Ricky Clay. He's a geopolitical analyst. Rick, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank
We're
you for
gonna,
having me today.
we're gonna focus most of our interview on Iraq, since you had the responsibility of supervising the Iraqi Ministry of Housing and Construction in from 2003 to 2009. How would you describe that period?
Well, it was a very challenging period, and it's hard to look back just how long ago that actually was. And but it was a very challenging period because the United States it was trying to do something that really hadn't been done very much throughout history, and that's nation building. And the United States really did not have a lot of experience in nation building or post-conflict management. And so when we went into Iraq and after we took it over, we were faced with so many challenges, and everything from at the beginning we did not have an insurgency. At the beginning, we had to deal with governance,
Mm.
how we were going to set up governance, how we were going to set up the financial system. There were a lot of misconceptions and over expectations, not only by the American and coalition forces,
Mm.
but also by the Iraqi people as well.
Mm-hmm.
I ran into this all the time. I really enjoyed my time there, the culture and so forth. And this is really one of the first times that I've actually spent any amount of long period of time, in the Middle East, and, and so it was very enlightening to get to know the people.
You
Um,
you were responsible of approximately 180,000 employees, and you were managing also $1.6 billion in civil and military construction projects. What are these projects, and how did you manage that?
well, it was a very big piece of responsibility in the Iraqi government that was set up. There were a lot of what was called state-owned entities.
Mm.
And during the beginning of the involvement, U.S. involvement, coalition forces involvement, we condensed those ministries into about half a dozen. And the Ministry of Housing Construction was actually one of the more important ministries. It you had it had oversight, it had responsibility for basically anything that had a structure on it that
Mm-hmm.
belonged to the previous Iraqi government. And that included civilian government, and as well as transportation, as well as military bases. And we also ended up having some ancillary responsibilities where a lot of military units, coalition forces, and so forth, would utilize a lot of the former Iraqi bases, and they would use our resources actually to build a lot of these forward operating bases,
Yeah.
throughout Iraq as we went. And that particular ministry was a very large ministry, very large, and it had anywhere between 120 to 130,000 employees, nationwide. And we ended up taking in a couple other minor ministries under our authority. I was the senior deputy advisor, and I had a senior advisor who
Yeah.
answered directly to Bremer. So those projects were. I'm a former city manager. I've also have a vast background in telecommunications,
Mm.
infrastructure, and so forth. So all of that led to, me being appointed into this position.
Do you expect one day to see Iraq today as a base for money laundering, according to the process that led to arrest Muhammad Ibrahim Bazdi, who is listed on American sanctions? He was accused using money for Hezbollah through Iraq. Iraq is a base of operation now. What do you say about that?
When we looked at the financial system, they really didn't have their financial system had almost completely collapsed. We had to rebuild that currency. We had to rebuild the central bank. We had to remonetize that. We also had to set up all the mechanisms that you do for international transfers and so forth. And we actually have done a very good. We actually did a very good job of that. Now you fast forward 20 some years later, we have pulled back from Iraq considerably, and they are in charge of their own governance. And you have these influences that are coming in now, particularly from Iran. Iran's biggest problem is Iran. I know that that may be a hard pill to swallow to a lot of people, but it is. And there's an internal conflict that's there between the Kurds, between the Arabs and the Persians, and those differences run very, very deep. And I saw this firsthand. But the biggest problem with Iraq right now, as far as what you're referring to, the money laundering, any system can be exploited. And you and I have talked about in our exchanges Operation Cassandra, and the effort to challenge Hezbollah's money laundering schemes that they currently were running throughout Central America. And it was very, very successful, extremely successful. And during the Obama administration, that was pulled back because the Obama administration's priority was the nuclear deal. It wasn't, Operation Cassandra. And quite interesting, there was a follow-on operation called Titan that actually came down with the prosecution of American interest here on our own soil. That was part of Operation Cassandra, and that's where he was brought in, prosecuted or by our Treasury Department. And Ross, because of the lack of controls that they have in their financial system, they're being exploited. It would be very, very easy for an organization as sophisticated as Hezbollah.
Yeah.
Hezbollah is a very sophisticated organization.
Yeah.
They run a lot of different types of organizations, public works, their own quasi government. They are not a fly by night. They are not a minor organization. They are a very organized, very sophisticated organization.
What about the efforts of countries like UAE and Saudi Arabia to fight terrorism and fight the Iranian influence in Iraq and try to bring back Iraq to its sovereignty?
There's a big political, let me back up just for a minute. There is a very big change happened, Maria, in the Middle East. And I know a lot of people say, well, they've always see this day in, day out anyway. There's always change and conflict there. Well, that's kind of true and kind of not true. The big thing is actually the United States is a geopolitical issue that's changing. And the United States position in the Middle East has drastically changed. And it's drastically changed because of the shale, United States shale. United States shale production has actually decoupled us from the Middle East. We don't need their oil. We don't need that. And the one thing that the United States provided, not only for the Middle East, but for the world, was actually free trade. We secured all the trade routes. And about 2001, the United States started to change that attitude. They started to pull back from the world, from the world. We don't really have the Navy as we used to have during the Reagan. During the Reagan administration, we had a 600 fleet Navy. With hundreds and hundreds of destroyers. Those destroyers and carrier battle groups is what you use to police these lanes. We only have 70 destroyers now.
Rick, my last question. How do you see the role of the United Arab Emirates and Mohammed bin Zayed? I know you know the Middle East, you've been there, you have a big experience. How are they now shifting from the monopole relation with USA by diversifying their relations with China, Russia. How do you
Yes,
see that? Is this a wise step or what? Do they have to
it's
do this?
necessary. It's actually a necessary step because this brings back the point that I was talking to you earlier about that the change of the United States, the United States has actually pulled back from being the arbiter of free shipping. We're still going to patrol the sea lanes. We are the strongest navy. We're not the biggest, but we're the strongest deep water navy there is in the world. That's going to happen. And that's given a lot of these countries throughout the world, not just particularly the Middle East, having not to worry about free trade, opening their sea lanes, being patrolled by a superpower that allows anything and everything to go across their sea lanes. Well, that's changing now. Now the United States is pulling back. Like I said, we only have 70 destroyers, and we've got 12 carrier groups, half of which are at port at any one time. So, we can bring a lot of power to bear, but it's not the Navy that we used to. Now, some countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, and so forth, now they have to start diversifying their needs because at any one time, a power like Iran can shut down their trade routes and damage them. And so they need to start looking out. They need to look out now. As far as China is concerned, China is, in my opinion, China's done anyway. China demographically is collapsing. Its economy is in wreck. Its agricultural system is in wreck. It's 90% of everything they use is imported,
Mm-hmm.
and energy. So that's why, now that, United States has been out of the Middle East as far as we don't really get a lot of oil from there, natural gas, but the UAE and Qatar and stuff, they have vast amounts of that.
Mm-hmm.
And natural gas is a prime ingredient in making fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
And two of the biggest fertilizers were just producing countries were just taken off the board.
Yeah, I want to thank you for this conversation, Rick. I hope I covered all the topics that you like to talk about, and maybe next time we do a longer interview. Thank you again for joining me.
Well, thank you, Maria. It was nice meeting you. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Hey, Maria Malouf here. Please click to like and subscribe to Maria Malouf TV YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.